It's late at night in the city of Chicago, and a police car is speeding like crazy toward the hospital because one of the officers has been shot. He's immediately rushed into surgery, and the staff goes to call Paul, the best surgeon in the hospital. He asks another doctor to finish up and hurries to see the cop, but unfortunately is too late. The officer has already died. The next morning, Paul has breakfast with his wife Lucy and their daughter Jordan, who has been accepted to college in New York.
I got in. I got in. I'm so happy to be living in it.
Afterward, they leave for Jordan's soccer match, where Paul and Lucy are very supportive of the girls. After the game, the family goes to a pizza place with Paul's brother Frank. Paul agrees to lend Frank $2,000 and Frank teases him for his salary, which is overheard by the valet Miguel. He also hears that the family will be away tonight, so when he goes to pick up the car, he takes a picture of the address on the car's sat nav. In the evening, the family is getting ready to go out to celebrate Paul's birthday, and they gift him a fancy new watch. However, at that moment Paul gets a call from the hospital, and he has no choice but to go to work and postpone the celebration. Lucy and Jordan go shopping for groceries instead, and when they return home, there's a suspicious van parked around a corner. Jordan goes upstairs to call her girlfriend, and Lucy is in the kitchen baking a cake for Paul, not noticing an ominous figure behind a door. Suddenly Lucy notices her cookbook changed pages because of a breeze coming from the window, which is supposed to be closed. When she moves to close it, she discovers muddy footprints on the floor. Realizing that someone broke in, Lucy yells for Jordan to come downstairs. But a robber is already hidden in her bathroom and captures Jordan when she tries to leave the room. Then Jordan is taken downstairs and it's revealed there are 3 criminals, who threaten with killing Jordan if Lucy doesn't cooperate. Then the leader takes Lucy to the safe to make her open it, and put all the family's valuable belongings in a bag.
Get all, whatever you want.
That's that.
In the kitchen, one of the robbers tells his partner not to fool around with the knife, making him put it down before he goes outside to look for a rope. Now that they are alone, the knife guy uses the chance to harass Jordan, only to be interrupted when his friend comes back with the rope. He asks the other thief to stop because they don't cross that line, and an argument ensues. Since they're distracted, Jordan takes the chance to grab the thief's knife and cut his face, resulting in the other guy hitting her and throwing her on the ground. Lucy returns with the third robber, and seeing the commotion, she grabs a pot of boiling water and throws it at a robber's face before telling her daughter to run. However, the criminals have had enough and begin shooting. At the hospital, Paul is in the middle of surgery when he hears about 2 incoming female patients over the intercom. He lets his coworker finish this one and rushes to help, but the other doctors don't let him work on this case. By the time they finally explain what's going on, Lucy is already dead, and Jordan is in surgery. Not believing it, Paul goes to check on the body anyway, getting incredibly upset by the sight. Afterward, detectives Raines and Jackson ask Paul a few questions and make a list of all the items stolen from the safe. Frank arrives too and shouts at the police officers for not taking the recent crimes in the area more seriously, but Paul tells him to calm down. The detectives try to assure Paul that they will catch the culprits.
Can you describe the watches?
It was a birthday present. Deeply sorry for your loss.
At that moment, a nurse announces that Jordan has come out of surgery alive but in a coma, and Paul sticks to her side. Sometime later, Lucy's father Ben is the one to speak at her funeral. On their way back, Ben stops the car in the middle of the road and looks at something on the ground. Furious for some reason, Ben gets back into the car and rushes to his property, where there are 2 poachers who immediately start running away. Ben gets out and starts shooting at them, but they escape. Paul is in shock, but Ben says they can't rely on the police, since they only arrive after a crime has taken place. He thinks that sometimes men need to take matters into their own hands, and then he shoots the deer that the poachers injured to put it out of its misery.
He has to do it for himself.
Sometime later, Paul is driving and talking on the phone with Rains and is disappointed to hear that there are no suspects yet. His bad mood causes him to shout at a homeless man who is trying to clean his car window. Afterward, he goes to visit Jordan and finds her girlfriend reading to her, and Paul is thankful that his daughter has support. As days go on, Paul starts going to therapy. He talks about how he is unable to sleep in the bed, so he sleeps on the couch. He also recalls his unhappy childhood riding trains by himself to avoid his father. Later in the evening, Paul is leaving the train station when he notices two men harassing a young woman. He calls them out to leave her alone, but the guys get angry and they beat him up instead, although at least the girl gets to run away. When he gets home, Paul watches TV and discovers an ad for a local firearms retailer that leaves quite an impression on him. The next day, he goes to that retailer, and the shop assistant shows him all the different weapons they have. However, he must fill in a bunch of paperwork and take a gun safety class, not to mention the security cameras everywhere, so he says he'll think about it.
Don't worry, no one ever fails.
I'm gonna think about it.
Sometime later, Paul is in the hospital attending to another gunshot victim. When they move the body for surgery, a gun falls out of the patient's pocket, so Paul kicks it under the operating table to retrieve it later, hiding it in his clothes. When Paul gets home, he tries to shoot the gun for the first time, but the bullet bounces and he realizes he has to learn more. For the next few days, Paul spends all his free time watching gun tutorials and learning how to handle the gun. After lots of practice, his aim becomes decent enough.
Most iconic pistol of all time. They put it back together by simply.
One day, Paul is called to the ICU and finds out Jordan has had a seizure. Her condition keeps getting worse, and it's unlikely that she'll survive. Noticing how her body has been strapped to the bed for safety, Paul becomes enraged because his daughter is in handcuffs but not the criminals that did this. His sanity finally snapping, Paul waits for nighttime to take the gun and starts walking through a rough area of Chicago while hiding his face with a hoodie. When he sees two men trying to steal a woman's car, he calls them out, but they jump in the car and shoot at him. As Paul rolls over to dodge the bullets, the criminals drive off, but Paul quickly recovers and shoots the driver, making them crash. A piece of glass falls off and hurts Paul's hand in the process. The other guy gets out of the car and starts blindly shooting too, so Paul hides behind a car and waits for the right moment to shoot him on the head, unaware that a woman at a window has filmed the whole thing. After adding a second shot just in case and telling the victim to run away, Paul admires the driver's last breath and leaves the scene, throwing his hoodie in the garbage before taking the train. When he gets home, he uses his medical knowledge to take care of his own wound and goes to sleep. Moments later, Rains and Jackson come to take statements. The woman that almost got robbed is incredibly grateful, but the one that recorded everything thinks he was cold and brutal. Unfortunately, Paul's face is not visible in the video, but the woman has already posted it on the internet anyway. The detectives watch it too and notice that the shooter has wounded his hand.
More like the Grim Reaper.
There. Well, he has now.
Through the area for a lot of police are looking for this man, the Chicago Grim Reaper.
The video soon goes viral and the media begins discussing if what he did was wrong or not, since he saved a person but he was also playing vigilante. This fame earns him the nickname the Grim Reaper. At the hospital, Paul wears band-aids on his hand to make it look smaller, and whenever cops walk by, he hides his hand in his pocket. In the afternoon, he helps a young boy, who was the victim of a shooting by a local criminal. By being gentle and understanding, he gets the boy to admit he was shot by a dealer known as the Ice Cream Man. He also gets his address from his chart. After work, Paul steals a hoodie from the hospital laundry and goes to the boy's shady neighborhood, where he finds the Ice Cream Man chilling on the street. Paul wastes no time and shoots the guy before running away.
You're the ice cream man?
and the locals take the chance to steal everything from his little cart. Moments later, the detectives arrive at the scene, and again they hear stories about a man in a hoodie. Raines notices some kids reenacting the shooting and notices the boy is using his left hand. By comparing it to the viral video, he figures that it was probably the same. The Grim Reaper. From last time.
Straight out of a comic book, this dude has gotten so...
Police are looking for this man, the Chicago Grim Reaper.
Reaper?
Yeah.
The next, the media is going crazy over the Grim Reaper attacking again, and Paul watches the news with pride. At the police station, the superior yells at the detectives for allowing some vigilante to go around shooting criminals, worried that others may start copying him. Some days later, Paul is operating on another gunshot, and he's shocked to discover it's Miguel. He also notices his watch on his wrist. Paul's attempts at saving him aren't very enthusiastic, and Miguel ends up dying on the operating table. Then Paul uses the chance to go to the ambulance and steal Miguel's phone. Then he unlocks it with Miguel's cold finger. After also taking his watch, Paul hides in his office and begins to look through Miguel's pictures, feeling disgusted when he sees a photo of the inside of his car. He digs a little more and finds a picture of a liquor store, which is actually a front for selling stolen goods. Paul considers calling the detectives, but in the end he decides to do the investigation himself. When Frank comes to see him, Paul cancels his plans and tries to get his brother's attention away from the wound on his hand. In the evening, Paul picks up another hoodie from the hospital's laundry and goes to the liquor store, where he makes up a story about being a friend of Miguel's. However, the owner notices the hospital label on the hoodie and sneakily sends a text to another criminal called Fish, telling him to come over. Then the man reaches for a revolver, but Paul sees this in the mirror and immediately nails his hand with a bar dart before demanding to see all the stolen things he resells.
Drop it.
Held at gunpoint, the owner takes him to a safe in the back, where Paul finds all the valuables stolen from his house. At that moment, Fish arrives and tries to shoot Paul, but he sees him on the security cameras and dodges, so the bullet kills the owner instead. Fish opens fire like crazy, and Paul has to hide to reload his gun. When Fish accidentally slips on the blood, Paul takes the chance to grab a guitar and hit Fish with it before pushing some furniture on the floor. Fish dodges just in time and runs back to the bar, but Paul uses the cameras to shoot Fish in the leg to make him fall. Then he steps on Fish's leg to ask him who killed Lucy, and Fish reveals it was a mechanic named Joe, saying that his address is on his phone. As Paul picks the phone up, Fish kicks him to the ground, hitting a shelf in the process. Then Fish stands up and aims his gun, but a bowling ball falls from the shelf on his head and he's knocked down, giving Paul the chance to shoot him with his own gun. Paul then quickly grabs the security hard drives and leaves, but his ring falls on the ground on his way out. When he gets home, he watches a video to learn how to destroy the drives with a drill. The next day, the media goes even crazier over the Grim Reaper, and anyone that saw him becomes viral. At the hospital, Paul steals some syringes and medicine, and he's suddenly visited by Raines and Jackson. They show him a picture of Fish and also the ring, which Paul confirms is his. The detectives think the ring had also been stolen, so they only came to give Paul the goods news, since this means they can finally advance the case.
No.
Thanks for your time.
See you guys. Have a seat.
After they're gone, Paul destroys Fish's phone. Later, Paul goes to visit Joe. He sneaks into the shop while Joe is under a car and takes him by surprise, knocking him out with a wrench. When Joe wakes up, he's tied under the car, and Paul begins hurting him to make him give up information. After giving him an injection, he makes a deep cut, then he pours brake fluid on the wound to cause unbearable pain. After lots of suffering, Joe explains that the guy that killed Lucy was called Knox. But nobody goes to him, you wait for him to come to you. Paul thanks Joe for the intel and releases him, but on his way out, he pulls at a chain to make the car fall on top of Joe to kill him.
You're not gonna kill me. No. Jack is.
The next day, the detectives go to see Frank. They've realized all the guys the Grim Reaper is killing are the ones that killed Lucy, so they want to see his hand. Meanwhile, Paul is in the hospital visiting Jordan and sees on the news that copycats are already killing people using the Grim Reaper story. At that moment, Paul gets a call from Knox, who asks him to meet at a club in 30 minutes. While Paul leaves for the club, Frank goes to Paul's home and lets himself in after no one answers the bell. When he enters the basement, he sees all the ammunition and the signs of Paul's depressed life, finally realizing he is the Grim Reaper. Paul goes to the very crowded club and messages Knox saying he's there. Knox tells him to meet in the bathroom, so Paul makes his way there and calls Knox's cell. Following the ringing of the phone, he kicks open a stall, only to find a phone there. At that moment, Knox appears from behind, and while using a civilian as a shield, he starts shooting like crazy, killing random people without a care. Paul gets hurt too and hides in the stall as he begins shooting too, managing to hurt Knox back. Then he shoots the power box, and when the lights go out, he blends in with the panicking crowd to escape. Moments later, the detectives get a call about the club shooting and go to the hospital where one of the victims claims he saw the shooter. This victim turns out to be Knox, who offers many details and causes the detectives to go to Paul's office next, but he isn't there. Meanwhile, Paul hides in another hospital room and fixes his latest wound with some glue and a stapler, which hurts terribly. Then he goes home and finds Frank there, who confronts him about how crazy he's become. Paul justifies himself by saying he had to do it because no one else would. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by the detectives ringing the bell, so Frank gets the door and tells them Paul isn't there. The detectives don't believe him, but they can't do more without a warrant and leave. At that moment, Paul receives a call from the hospital informing him that Jordan is awake. He rushes there, and after having a warm reunion with his daughter, he has to tell her that her mother is dead, causing Jordan to have a breakdown. Now that Jordan is better, Paul promises Frank that he won't be a vigilante anymore. A week passes and Jordan is finally allowed to go home, and the detectives come to ask her some questions, but Jordan doesn't remember anything from the night of the attack. When she and Paul enter the elevator, Knox joins them, and Paul ignores him for safety. Knox makes small talk with Jordan, and when they leave, Knox says he'll see them around. Seeing this as a threat, Paul goes back to the gun store and buys some weapons legally. Later in the evening, Jordan gets ready for bed after dinner. However, Paul suddenly sees something outside and tells her to get under the stairs and call 911. At that moment, a man enters through the back door and goes to Paul's room to shoot at the figure on the bed, but they're just pillows. Another henchman follows the noise of a running shower, but this is also a trap, and Paul shoots him in the head. When the first guy comes to check on him, Paul is hidden next to the body and quickly shoots again, causing the guy to fall to the first floor. Then Paul hears a noise in the basement and goes down, but Knox surprises him and shoots him in the shoulder, making him fall on the couch. At that moment, Jordan comes out of the stairs and screams, which distracts Knox. Paul uses this chance to hit a button on his table to reveal a hidden weapon and uses it to finally kill Knox. When the police finally arrive, Paul tells the detectives that he got all his injuries tonight, and that he acquired all his weapons legally after Jordan woke up to protect her from getting hurt again. He also says he'll give his weapons up, implying he's done with being a vigilante. The detectives don't believe him, but they're satisfied with the results and decide to let the matter go. Sometime later, Paul drops Jordan off at college in New York City, where her girlfriend is already waiting. As he is heading back to his car, Paul sees a man steal a bag from a bellhop's cart, and he can't help calling him out as he points a finger gun at him.